I think that my body went into deep hibernation and that my heart was beating really slow, like one time every 10 seconds, but it was just enough to keep everything alive in there without letting it die. Shortly after that, it's almost like the sky opened up, and I was almost like if I was looking in the horizon, and then there appeared in front of me was millions and millions of and trillions of these like air particle molecules, and they reminded me of these little bubbles, but they were all attentively looking at me. And one of them moved forward towards me and said, "Hey, we're here to breathe into you. Can we breathe into you?" So they asked for permission, and I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. I sensed that they knew something I didn't. And so I, of course, give them permission to breathe in. But as they were rushing in at 1,000,000 miles an hour, I sensed their intelligence.
Grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and subscribe. These stories will change how you see everything. My guest today is Stacy Stubbs, and this is the first time that he is doing a formal interview telling his NDE story, and it's an incredible one. He actually was in a construction accident that went horribly wrong. His body was completely crushed and pinned in this accident, and trillions of air molecules with an intelligence came into his body, and you do not want to miss what happened to him and how they helped him. So, Stacy, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm already getting a little emotional.
Oh, well, I hope it's a good emotional because I know
Yes.
these stories do so much for so many people. And it's got to be a little bit nerve-wracking and vulnerable to share something for the first time. But you are in an incredible audience who was very respectful. And I'm sure that people are going to want to support you in telling this story.
Thank you very much
Do you
as
want to tell us a
well.
little bit like what your life was like before this accident happened?
Yeah, before this experience, my goodness.
You
Hmm.
can talk about like maybe what you believed things, how things worked, how you thought things worked, maybe something like that.
Yeah, so I was raised in a pretty conservative uh, community. It was actually quite conservative, and I was actually born and raised in the FLDS, Mormon religion, and then on to not believing anything to about the age of 20. I was seeking for guidance, seeking for a God, if there was anything real, if this was what was this life for. Moved to Hawaii for a little while, had an awakening there. Um, and then it led up to this accident happened when I was a young man. I was actually 23 years old, and 23, 24. Hawaii was really good for me because it softened me up, and the there was just gentleness there where the mainland, it seemed like people were more hardcore and rough on the edges, and so I was going through some ups and downs with my own journey at the time, but I I felt really drawn to be close to family rather than to be off. And I have a considerably large family. My mother has 10 children, and I'm the oldest son. So, but I felt like it was important to connect and stay connected with my younger siblings. So I agreed to come and work with family. I was actually in the city of St. George, Utah, where this accident occurred. And basically, it was a triple wide modular home. And um, it has these metal frames underneath that support them with these axles so they can pull them down the highways. And so 3 sections. We had previously the day before had set up 2 of the main sections, had them bolted together. We took out the axles from underneath them, had them set up on jack stands. They, to me, they seemed like they wouldn't ever have an issue of falling, but we had the last section there that we had to, it was on the little pump jacks. There were 4 pump jacks, and then they were set up with rollers with these, it's like metal I-beams with rollers in them that you could move it forward, backwards, left to the right, and then position it to be able to get it next to the next unit. And then once it's leveled and everything's right, then we bolt it together. But this particular morning, it was about 8 o'clock in the morning. This was probably March 18th, I would say, probably 1994. So this particular morning, it was 8 o'clock in the morning. We had previously set the other 2 units. We came in, we each decided where our positions were, and I decided that my position would be up in the upper inside corner. It was the danger zone. Yeah. And, you know, we had been setting these homes for a couple of years, so I had some experience in all of this. So this was not our first job. And I think after a while, you just kind of get comfortable with it. But you always know that there's a danger. We had dropped homes before, and I always remembered the previous homes that had fell. I was like, wow, you know, I better make sure I'm out of the way if these come down, because they do come down. But this particular morning, I was under there, and we were all working our jacks. You have to work them all simultaneously so that everything is evenly balanced, and then let them all down at the same time. So you have to keep communication with the other guys. So there's 4 people tending their jacks, and so if one jack gets let down a little bit too faster than the others, it causes an imbalance, and so it'll actually start wobbling a little bit. And when it starts wobbling, you know that it's probably going to fall, so you better jump out of the way. So, but you only have a second. In my mind, I thought, well, this thing's coming down. I better jump as hard as I can, as fast as I can. And I feel uncomfortable being underneath this thing. So I'm going to try to jump out of the way and underneath these other houses to try to, so if it comes down, at least it'll miss me. But well, what happened is as soon as I jumped, then I literally felt it wham, and it was my chest, like right here, was on this concrete footing. Now I'm on my chest, and I'm face down, but I felt it, like the massive pain and like the impact, and then it was just the pain was just excruciating. And of course, I stayed conscious through most of this until I couldn't be conscious because of the air. But I remember all the air going out, and then once the air left my lungs, of course, I'm literally screaming inside like bloody murder, like this hurts. But there's no sound coming out of my mouth because, of course, there's no nothing to scream with. So, and then I felt my body heat up, like it felt like 1,000 degrees. It was super hot. And then, of course, I'm like, this is it, your life, and it's over. And I thought, wow, that was quick. That was a quick life. But then I seen like a movie or like a video of my lifeline or my life from the very beginning, since I was in my mother's womb, since I was just an embryo. And so I watched the time up that I was in the belly, born, and then different events throughout my life, all the way, and it played all the way out until that moment. And but then in eternal time, that was only like 9 seconds. I mean, it was just rapid, real fast. I thought, wow, but I felt super sad that I was unfinished, that incomplete, and I was like, I would do anything to be able to go back and to live that life, but then I, in my mind, I said, there's just no way that would be possible, because I literally felt like that thing um, landed on my head, and I thought my brain was spread out, and I would be like a paraplegic. And I was like, well, I certainly don't want to live if I'm going to be in a hospital bed, spoon fed, and 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 be subject to a wheelchair. So I remember, I'm just like, God, if there's any way that, I mean, and I didn't think there was anyway, but if there was just a slight chance that I could live and not be crippled or paralyzed, that I would want to come and live. And but if I was going to be, I didn't want to be. Just take me, please. And then it was just it. I remember it. I remember hearing my bones crushing. It just felt like I was in a fire. It went all black, and it was just quiet, and I was nowhere. It was like there was nothing, and I was just in space. And then, as I was sitting in that space, there was no memories. There was no. I didn't really have consciousness of anything. That was just like in an idle zone. I didn't have a name. I didn't have nothing, and I pretty much had accepted that was, I had passed. But then, as I was sitting there, then I it was almost like I started receiving a signal from somewhere, and I was like, what is that trying to tell me? And at first, it appeared like a red beacon, kind of like one of them things on the ocean that just kind of blink, a buoy. And I thought, that's interesting. I wonder why is that blinking red? And then that went away, and then it was almost like these waves were coming, almost like radio signals or Wi-Fi. I don't know. It was just these these this information that was coming from across the universe, and I was like, now what's that trying to tell me? And so I just kind of sat there with that, and as I was sitting with that, um, it came to me that might be coming. I was actually wondering where it was coming from, and I was like, well, and in my mind, I guess I made it up that it was coming from somewhere like Pluto. And so I was like, okay, so, but it was like one signal every 10 seconds, and after I thought about it, and after I come back, and I think that my body went into deep hyper. My heart was beating really slow, like one time every 10 seconds, but it was just enough to keep everything alive in there without letting it die, I would suppose. Shortly after that, it's almost like the sky opened up, and I was almost like if I was looking in the horizon, and then there appeared in front of me was millions and millions and trillions of these like air particle molecules, and they reminded me of these little bubbles, and but they were all attentively looking at me, and one of them moved forward towards me and said, "Hey, we're here to breathe into you. Can we breathe into you?" So they asked for permission, and I thought, well, that's just, that's kind of interesting. I sensed that they knew something I didn't, and so of course give them permission to breathe in. But as they were rushing in at 1,000,000 miles an hour, I sensed their intelligence, and each one of them knew exactly to what part of the body they were going to. It's almost like they they each one knew exactly. I mean, it's just it's hard to explain, but as they rushed through, it was incredibly cooling my body off. But then it was like a tickling, and the sensations were so like rushing and zinging back and forth, and into every little cell, and all the way down, and zigzag back down and out my toes and in out my fingers. And I was like, whoa, what was that? And it was just so incredibly amazing. Uh, and then they approached me again and says, we would like to breathe into you again. Can we breathe into you? And I remember thinking, well, that's just what mighty strange. Why would you want to breathe into me? Only humans and animals and living things need to breathe air. Um, if I breathe air, that must mean I'm alive. But of course, I took that second breath, and then the consciousness came to me that you're alive. Your name is Stacy Stubbs. You're on the brink of death, and you're just barely hanging on by a thread. You were just in this accident, and so and then of course the pain, all that, and the trauma, and my body was in shock at the time, so it wasn't all hitting me at that time. But in that during that time, I was, laying there, uh, also very afraid of moving at all. I was just like, I'm afraid if I tell my leg to move or my arm to move, that they won't respond. And it wasn't but a couple of seconds, 5 seconds afterwards, I literally heard an audible voice in a masculine, in a very gentle voice, and it just said, "It'll be as though nothing happened." And I knew without a doubt that that was the truth. And um, instantly I was like, okay, I'll move my right leg. So I moved my leg and moved my ankle, moved my toes, and that worked. I'm like, wow, that's wonderful. So then my left leg and my left ankle and my toes, and that worked. And then my right hand and fingers and elbow, and then my left hand, and I had a broken bone on that one, and that one hurt. I was like, ow, that one hurt. And so then I moved, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna live. Everything's gonna be all right. And of course, I couldn't breathe. I mean, it was really hard to breathe. Um, just because my lungs were that frame landed on my right shoulder right here, and it broke it in 3 places. And then it came right across the center of my chest, and then exited on my left butt cheek. So all them ribs and were cracked or broken, dislocated, and then the 3 pieces in my shoulder were broken, and then I was kind of on my knees a little bit, so it shoved my right leg up into my pelvis, so there was no cushion, and it was just rubbing raw bone there, so I couldn't walk. But anyways, the other thing is there was a little bit of an area below that concrete footing where my stomach was, that just allowed a little bit of for my intestines to have a little bit of room so they didn't rupture. When I was in the hospital, the doctor said, yes, my liver almost ruptured, that it was that it had bled on the outside, and but it didn't rupture. And then but everything else was okay. And then, my head swelled up about the size of, bigger than a basketball, and my skin polka dotted, blood was coming out the pores. So it was polka dotted, and then I had these purple eyes like this, and then the whites of my eyes turned pure red. So it was a close call.
Wow. Wow. I can't even imagine. How much do you think those pieces that fell on you weighed?
I imagine that particular unit was probably 30 or 40,000 pounds.
So like 15 to 20 tons.
Yeah.
And how in the world did they get that off of you?
So they had to, of course, get their jacks, run around, and then they couldn't get the jacks underneath the house because the frame was down to the ground. And so they were shoveling holes deep enough to try to get the jacks in, and they're jacking, and the jacks are just going down in the soil. And finally, after they got their 3 or 4 other jacks, somebody finally found a place that they could get under the front tongue and have some solid ground, and they was able to start pumping it up. But for me, it felt like an eternity, and it felt like it was every bit of, like, if there was to put a time clock on it, it felt to me like I was under for at least 10 minutes. And in my mind, I was like, if you don't have oxygen in your brain for 4 or 5 minutes, you start getting brain dead. And so that was my other worry, but I fully recovered. um I went home after the hospital. I lived in a hospital bed. First I was just in a regular bed, but I couldn't even get up to go to the bathroom. So someone would have to come, and my stepmother had to come, and she'd reach under me and pick me up, like, to support me so that I could sit up. And then it would take me 20 minutes to walk 20 feet to the bathroom because the pain was so excruciating. Finally, somebody got me a hospital bed, and I lived in the living room so that people could take care of me.
So what's interesting about this is that when the particle said that they were going to heal you to the point where it would be as if it didn't happen, which it sounds like it did, do you have any idea how extensive the injuries were that they healed?
So now this is an interesting thing for me, because during the healing process, they had me on painkillers, and the pain medicine. You can't really sleep real well, or you sleep all the time, but you're kind of in and out, but and it usually takes about 6 weeks for your bones to heal. And the interesting thing, the most fascinating thing, that the body is just amazing. But 6 weeks almost to the day, I mean, I was finally feeling like I can breathe. I'm not like under all this massive pain, and I feel like I'm almost healed. But within 6 weeks, almost to the day, it's almost like my body chose a whole nother set of things to heal. Like, so it could only heal so many things at one time, and it put everything else on the back shelf and hid them from me. Like I didn't even know that there was still more issues. So I woke up 6 weeks in one day, and I felt like I got ran over by a steamroller. The pain was all over again. And that's when you've been fighting it for that long, it's hard to manage that. But it was another 6 weeks, and it healed another 12 more things, whatever them were. But I imagine that it took care of the body, took care of the most important vital things the first 6 weeks. So
Yeah, sure, that makes sense. So I have a few questions for you about your NDE. So I want to go back to what you described, as you said you were seeing on these tiny screens all these scenes from your life. Would you consider that to be a life review?
Yes, absolutely.
And from what vantage point were you seeing them? Only from yours, from other people's? How did it feel when you were experiencing that?
For me, it seemed like it was from my viewpoint, and it was from so I felt like I was incomplete, like unfinished, and
You mean unfinished in the part that because you were 24, whatever you were?
yes, yeah,
Okay.
and unfinished with this life. Like if you wanted to live your full life, and suddenly it got cut short, it was just heartbreaking that I didn't get to finish it. And there was. I also went through this time, or this phase where I actually resented being back. I wanted to be back on the other side, and so I had to accept the fact that I had to come back to the reality and the pain and all the struggles, and so that was hard.
I'm sure it was. So in this life review, you're having this experience and you're seeing all of these different scenes. Did it feel as real as it did? Did you have the same emotions, or were you watching it from more of a detached point of view?
I had more emotions about it. Like, so, for example, um, I felt like I could do so much better. I feel like that I needed to clean up some of the messes in my life, in my past. And I actually got really clear on what my mission is. And my mission is just to love. Um, and that was, if I was to do anything, that was just to love. And then for whatever reason, I just felt this extreme love for my mother, and I'm like, so you need to go love your mother. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So but so since then, that's how I've tried to live my life, is just from love and being love.
So when you were experiencing the feeling of, I could have done better, what do you want people who are watching to know and understand about that?
So when we're younger, we make mistakes. We probably treat people unkindly. We don't know how to love ourselves, and so we don't know how to treat others with the same amount. And sometimes, you know, uh, I, I feel like that. I grew up in a pretty toxic home, and had a broken family, and so I had toxic behaviors, and you know, and so you're gonna do things that just you could have done better. You could have been a little bit more loving, or at least been a better person. And yeah, so I wanted to become the best person that I could be and become to help others. And if I got this second chance, you know, I, I think it's so important that we all support each other, that we lift each other up, that we encourage one another, and we all have our own walk. Part of my healing process was forgiving my boss. Um, I was working for him. We were setting this house, and he came to me one day and he says, "You know what?" He says, "I'm not going to pay any more of your hospital bills. I'm not going to help you out." He says, "Just go get bent." And I got pretty angry. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be partially disabled. I don't know if I'm going to be have some. I don't know if I can go out anymore and get a full time job and all this. But I felt after I got angry for a couple of months, I felt like it was holding up my healing process. And so I felt inspired to forgive him 100%. And and so I went with it. I was like, you gotta forgive him and just let it go and just love him. And that was hard. But as soon as I fully reached that place of 100%, like I don't hold any more energy, I received my healing full.
Well, so why do you think that was? Do you think it was because you were diverting energy towards an emotion and your body needed that energy in a different frequency?
I think so. And I think that when we're angry or judgmental, um, and we're holding on to things that we're not letting go, I think I believe that will divert your energy and keep you from uh, for lack of better words, vibrating on a higher frequency to receive the healing that you deserve.
So for the people who are watching and they're suffering from something they're trying to heal, do you have some advice of what they could, maybe a process that they could implement that would help assist their healing? What would you tell them?
So, recently within the last year, my family has got into meditation,
Your whole
and
family?
yes, and we've got into a lot of Dr. Joe's work,
And you're talking
and
about Dr. Joe Dispenza for people who aren't
yes,
familiar with them.
yes. Well, so my mother is the one that I have seen the most improvement. She's had diabetes. She's got lymphoid, uh, lymph disease, something like that. Um, we went to an event last June, a year ago, June, and but before we went to that event, we were having conversations, and she was talking about one of the books she'd been reading about change, and she goes, "That is no longer loving to me," and that's anyway. So she started changing her story. But I've been watching. My mother's 78, so I'm watching her transform right before my eyes. Well, she has been able to forgive my dad. I mean, my dad was an abusive alcoholic to her. He was physically abusive to her and the children. And but uh, both my parents ended up going to the event together. They've been divorced for 40 years. Uh, we have weekly meditations. I created in my office, I created a meditation room. I put a big screen, surround sound. I went all out, and we do family meditations there every Monday morning at 10 o'clock. But I believe we're getting downloaded when we're going to meditation, and we're getting the correct information rather than our brain information, which is your brain's just a memory plan. So there's there's one other real important story that I want to share, and that's um, several years ago. I had a drug problem, and then I got in trouble, went to jail, got released from jail, and I'm like, I'm homeless. I'm like, so what am I going to do with my life? What am I going to do with my life? Well, I found this book called Excuse Me, Your Life is Waiting. And it was written by a lady, her name was Lynn Grabhorn. And it was teachings on the law of attraction. And I felt inspired that I needed to write. So yeah, I get a lot of information in here. So I felt inspired to write affirmations to myself first before I went and found the book. But I wrote these affirmations. I promised to love myself. I promised not to abandon myself. I promised to be honest with myself and to honor myself and to be true to others, to be true to myself. And I wrote on this envelope all the way down. I was getting downloaded with it until it was completely full. And I'm like, okay, so this is my foundation that I can't waver from what's written on here. That evening, I was directed to go to a bookstore and buy a book, but I didn't want to read a book. I wanted to listen to a book, but this is 20 years ago. And so I went into a Barnes and Noble. I found the Audible section. I bought this book. $26. I think I had $27 in my pocket there. But I took them CDs. There was 6 CDs, and I took them home. And I happened to have a player that had 6, would hold 6 discs. And I put it on play, and at 10 o'clock at night, I was like, oh, it's time to go to bed now. And something said, no, just leave it on and let it play. And so I did. And I let that thing play for 3 months, round the clock. I mean, I took that radio with me to work. I mean, but about 2 months into it, I was shown like this jukebox and all these records, 1,000 records. And that was like all these different songs. And that was like your brain. And so you think a thought, it scans over, finds that record, picks it up, and starts playing that song. And so you're listening to your thoughts, and you're like, yep, that's right. And then you think another thought, it puts that one down, it scans over, picks up another record, and starts playing that song. And so what I was shown was that I was rewiring my brain by listening to these recordings 24/7. All of a sudden, these white gloves picked up this record and shined it, and it turned silver, and then it started scribing on it and writing the new information, and that was a new program. And so then I'd have another thought, and put that one down and go over and pick up this old record and clean that off and turn it shiny silver, and then scribe on that one. And so it was rewriting the whole program.
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you wanted to share that. You know, I was going to ask you what were the downloads. And first, you shared all of those affirmations and you said them. And Stacey, the reason this makes me so happy is because one of the reasons I do these interviews and one of the reasons I really enjoy it so much is because people like you who have had these incredible experiences on the other side, it changes you. You're exposed to information and concepts that we are not mainstream, right? They're not in the vernacular the way that some others are. And when you share them the way that you did, they're like dropping little gold nuggets that people can pick up. They can take that information, they can extrapolate it, they can apply it in their life however they want, but then they benefit from the wisdom that you brought back. And that's all such a massive ripple effect on this planet. And little by little, it wakes us up to the, we're powerful. And what you just said about the thoughts, holy cow. The very first video I ever put on this channel was a 20-minute video. It's horrible. It's awful. The audio is awful. Everything about it's awful. I memorized this like a talk track, a story that I wanted to tell about how to change your thoughts for days and days and days, maybe even weeks. And I did it in one take I didn't know how to edit. I did it in one take. And it was all about the changing the thoughts. But what you just described is so beautiful. And I want you to share a little bit more about why you picked the book that you picked. You were drawn to it, obviously, you were led to it, I believe, but it's also very scientific that you did this for 3 months, because it takes 90 days, according to science, to rewire your brain and make a permanent change. And I learned this when I was a pharmaceutical rep for people who needed to quit smoking or needed to quit a habit. 90 days. So it's really interesting, all of the pieces. So I would love for you to elaborate on this.
Okay, so I can definitely share, I mean, the benefits from reprogramming. After that 3 months, I knew that anything was possible. There was nothing impossible.
I like,
And
say that again. Everything was possible. There is nothing impossible. I want you to kind of elaborate on that in a little bit.
yeah,
It's super important, I can tell.
yeah, yeah. Um, so, you know, it, I was going through an interesting experience when I was having these awakenings. I was actually in Phoenix, Arizona, out of all places, in the middle of the summer, and I was doing construction. I had been homeless. I'd actually borrowed a friend's car to drive from Salt Lake City to Phoenix, and I was down on some jobs down in Tempe, down by the college, or down by the water, actually, and we were doing a concrete construction right by the bridge and right by the water there. And the contractor I was working with, he had made a disaster there, and I was working night shift to repair and fix all the mistakes that the day crew had made, and so I have artistic abilities, and I'm able to mix colors and anyway. So this, after being on that job for several months, the engineer came up, and he had been so mad because he thought his job was destroyed, but he came and he seen all of a sudden it was beautiful. He's like, "Who are you? Where'd you come from? And whatever you're doing, please don't stop and don't leave. Please don't leave." And I was like, "Oh, we'll be here and you'll be happy when we're done." And but um, and then I went on to Apache Junction and ended up uh, walking with the city mayor and closing them jobs out. So I was cleaning up messes for my contractor that I was working for and making everything beautiful. And then after that, I'm like, okay, so I I could do anything. I could go anywhere. Where do I want to go? What do I want to do? And of course, I love Costa Rica. Whatever reason, I thought, well, maybe Alaska, and it didn't make logical sense. Here it's like winter's beginning, but I felt pulled to go there. And so I went to and moved to Anchorage, Alaska in November of 2002. Started my own company, and I was running a several $1 million, multi-million dollar company. It was built from nothing within 5 years. I mean, I had 38 employees and houses, 2 houses. I was vacationing in Hawaii. I mean, it, that was, I was doing probably $3 or $4 million in contracts. It didn't matter if it was winter or summer up there, but I was quickly becoming a big contractor, and $1 million going through my bank account a month, and I would go to Hawaii and stay for 2 months in the worst parts of the winter, and having the best of both worlds, and And then I've been able to start my own company where I'm at now. And I invented a product that could have been invented 100 years ago, but it's absolutely just thriving. But I I live coming from my heart, and having a higher consciousness, and I believe in living uh, a life with integrity, and a life uh, coming from love, and um, and we're not machines, we're not robots, and um, if you don't love it, don't do it. um, you know what, I hated my jobs. I worked construction for 25, 30 years, and you know I lost everything 5 years ago. I was devastated. My wife left me. I lost my dreams. I literally was standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon, wishing I had the courage to end it. The
I don't think that
pain
would have been
in
a great way to go.
the pain inside was, I couldn't run from it anymore.
Yeah.
And but I finally put down the bottle after drinking my entire life since I was 12 years old. And it's been 5.5 years, 5 years, December 26, 2019. And I come up with this product. I invented it. I got it patented. Um, but I literally had to sit in my pain for 2 years and just feel everything, and just be with it and not run no more. And after that 2 years, I um, felt like it was time to reach for my dreams, and I knew I had an idea on that shelf that was dusty, and I reached back and I brought it, and shined it, and six probably, on my 1 year anniversary, my 1 year anniversary of not drinking, I I knew that I needed to do something really big for me, and show up for myself in a way that I'd never shown up for. And I was like, "How, Stacy? You need to celebrate yourself. You need to pat yourself on the back. This is an important day, and you need to acknowledge it." And so I was looking at these all-inclusive vacation packages in Cancun, and then I was looking at maybe going to Costa Rica, and then I was like, "Well, um, let's go to Cancun and Costa Rica." And I was like, "What?" I actually asked my boss if I could, and then I was like, "What are you thinking? You need to be in control. You're the boss, and you don't have to ask permission from anyone." And so I ended up taking myself to Cancun, and I treated that as my own honeymoon. And I call it my own honeymoon because I was finally given to me.
Wow, that's incredible. Tell me a little bit more about that book and why you were
Mm,
led to it. What was in it?
yes. Okay, so originally, okay, I found myself in trouble. I was in my 28, 29, and 30 years old. I was deeply addicted to methamphetamine. And I ended up in jail for 2 months. And when I got out, I had to stay at my dad's house. I didn't have a house. I didn't have a place to live. So I had to share a room with some of my little brothers. And, you know, uh, my stepmother actually brought the book to me in paper form and says, "You should read this." And I don't think that she really read it, but I think she was just feeling like that was what I needed to do. And so I started reading it, but I just I'm kind of got a little bit of ADHD, or I can read books occasionally, but it's really hard for me to just really dive in and just go. And so when I was searching for this Audible book, uh, Lynn Grabhorn, she has passed now, but and that book has been rewritten. But when I was searching for all the books in that bookstore, I um, the bookshelf was probably the store length, and it was all self-help section. And then I narrowed it down to about halfway, and then I narrowed it down to a 10-foot section in front of me, and then it narrowed down to 5 of them, and then I was in there for, I don't know, a couple of hours. Really, I was like, I got to find it, and I just kept looking, and then it came down to between 2, and then I remembered that book, and I'm like, I really wanted to read this one. Let's get this one. And so that's what made me finally pull that book and uh and grab it. So,
Well, what was inside of it? What did you hear the first time you listened to it that made you want to repeat it for 90 days, day and night?
well, the old programs were so loud and so strong that we get used to listening to the same old stories over and over and over and over and over again. And I would, this, it's been what, I'm 55 now, so that's been 25 years, probably 24 years. I think I was probably 31, 32. But there was so many gold nuggets in that book, and there was the one chapter in that book that really speaks the most to me. Um, it, she calls it breakthrough in 30 days, and she talked about making your own 30 days. So whenever you have a negative thought or something that's really bothering you, to have a flip switch, to flip something that you really appreciate about yourself, and just learn how to train your brain, because your brain wants to go focus on the past, right? Because it's just bringing up old memories. It's playing them old songs. And so she was like, create a flip switch in your mind when you have that thought, and you go think, and you think it for 30 days. You get to think about something you appreciate about yourself, and you got to keep that thought for 24 hours. And so so a negative thought comes up, you flip switch and go to that positive thing that you appreciate about yourself, and snap out of it. And so she was literally teaching me how to flip out, or change out of these old patterns. And so there's hundreds and hundreds of examples in there of how to break free and to get out.
So did
That's
you
just one.
immediately begin implementing this and starting to work on like one thought at a time?
Yeah, okay, so if there's anything that I've learned um, about manifestation, that is, it's okay to daydream, and it's okay when you're dreaming about a future, something you want to create, that new car or that new house or that new relationship or whatever it is, but to get into the feeling place and feel it. And in that book she would say, and feel it until you're warm and fuzzy. And she would just say it in a way that would just like, and then just uh bask in that fuzzy, in that warm, yes, I got it. And believe it, even if you don't see it and you don't uh it's, if it's not even
Make it
here
till
yet,
you make it.
right? And so So staying in that place of like really raising that frequency, and then just staying in that feeling, and then just like truly um, just acting as if, and believing that it is so.
So give me an example of one of the very first things you can remember that you did this, that you tried this, that it worked.
Well, I I have to say that it truly does. I mean, you can't. It took 3 months to wire enough to be able to break, to make the habits to be able to be able to start manifesting. Um, First, you know, a lot more self love and self care came. Especially as them voices and as this mind is quieted down, and you're not running. Um, you know, I'll go back to the honeymoon with myself and my invention. Until I was felt worthy to receive, I was not able to receive, and so um, we need to. It's important. It's vital that we learn to love ourselves. There's a number one. We get to love ourselves first before we can fill our own cup up first, before we try filling somebody else out. Pull the thorn out of your own eye first before you try to pluck it out of someone else's eye. And but yeah, my first manifestations was being able to close them jobs out, and and to save this guy hundreds of thousands, of, if not millions of dollars. And being in a, so I want to go back just a little bit. So on this affirmations, so I'm going to give a little more in depth on that. When I was writing in my affirmations, it was the middle of summer in Phoenix, and I had a whole slew of old memories of past living in Phoenix back when in my teenage years, and I was like, I got to get out of the city now, and my car was across the city, and this was my first day at work, and I'm sitting in this construction truck trying to get out and put my tool bags on, and it's 120 degrees outside, and I'm trying to get the courage to go out there and just force myself to go beat my hands and mind and body against the elements. But when I was sitting in the truck and started writing these affirmations, I promised to be here for myself. I promised to love myself. I promised not to abandon myself. The promise not to abandon myself was so big because I've abandoned myself multi millions of times over and over and over and over again. And that's such a huge one right there. But when I was
Tell me what you mean when you say you abandon yourself. What do you mean by that?
well, when you abandon yourself, when you go out, you have to go when you okay, say for example, I didn't want to get out of that air conditioned truck and put my tool bag on and go grab a hammer and start pounding nails, or a shovel and start shoveling dirt when it wasn't resonating, it wasn't real with me, right? I needed to find peace within and make an agreement with myself that we're going to be okay, we're going to work through this, or but not force myself and whip myself to, you need to do this, you need to do that, and it was like, so I think it's all that is important. I don't regret any. I worked uh, many years hard, very very hard, and I don't regret any of it because it taught me what I am and now, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But what I wanted to want to share with you is after I wrote these affirmations, I literally felt something shift in my brain like 180 degrees. It went from fight or flight, like I got to get the hell out of here now, to all of a sudden I could hear the birds singing. All of a sudden I could smell the aroma of flowers in the air and blossoms. And all of a sudden, I mean, a peace came over me, like, and it wasn't even hot anymore. It wasn't even 120. It was like 100. I'm like, I can do this. So a lot of it was right up here. It was just noise.
Wow, incredible. Thank you so much for sharing all those. Those are super helpful. I want to ask you a couple more questions about the near-death experience.
Yeah.
You heard that voice. Who was the voice?
I don't know. I don't know who the voice was. I just know that it was masculine. It was soft, and it was very assuring. And it was just, it will be as though nothing ever happened. I mean, it was almost a little bit short, like it'll be as though nothing happened, something like that.
Tell me more about what you understand about the particles.
So with particles, um, I'm 55 now, and I'm a little bit more aware, but uh, I was doing a meditation, one of the first meditations with Joe Dispenza, and I was in a place of nowhere, no thing, and it took me back into this darkness where I was back where I was having that near death experience, and then in the meditation he said dissolve, and I literally felt like my whole body just turned into particles and molecules and just flutter out clear across the cosmos, and like I felt one with Earth, one with all the planets, one with God. One, I mean, there was no difference between countries, and there was no difference between people, male, female. We're all the same. There is no separation. We're one, and that took me back to that near death experience where I'm like, I've been here before.
Wow, that's incredible. I am so happy that you decided to come in and share this story with a larger audience than you've been sharing it with. Not only is the near-death experience incredible, but also how you've been able to overcome these injuries, how you've been able to get through these addictions, how you've been able to learn to love yourself, to manifest, and to share the affirmations that you've used, to share these techniques that you use to help you change your thoughts. So tell me how you feel different now compared to all those many years ago, before and even after that near-death experience. What's your life feel like now?
You know, for 50 years, I carried guilt and shame with me for all the mistakes I'd done, the things that I didn't do right. Um, I it was like something that I couldn't shake off of me, and um, all that changed probably 2 years ago. All of that guilt and shame finally dropped off of me for good. And in fact, whenever I start having guilt and shame thoughts, I I recognize it and I stop it, and I know that that's not the truth. And I know that I am love, and that I am loved and I'm supported. It's taken a lot to get to this place, but I have such an inner peace and such a place where there's days where I get to show up for myself multiple times, over and over and over and over again. Like, there's so many things that make a difference, even if it's as simple as taking a break, or getting a meal, taking a nap, taking care of yourself, loving yourself, honoring yourself, and not talking down to yourself, treating yourself with respect, and truly honoring yourself. It's so important. Um, um, you know, I just want to say that it starts with self-love. All of it does. And until you can truly love yourself, um, you can't really make a difference in other people's lives.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's so important. I'm glad that you're talking about it. It's not the norm for men to be able to talk about this. I love hearing it from you.
Yeah.
So, Stacey, I know that you don't have a website about your near-death experience and you have not written a book yet. I'm going to say yet because we talked
Yes.
about that. But you do have this incredible business, and maybe people will want to support you or reach out if they've got questions. So, you want to share where they can find you?
Yeah. So the name of my company, I actually named my company Inspired Tool Design.
I love it.
And so I live my life. I want to live my life by being inspired. So every step I do, everything I do, I want synchronicities, and um, I want flow and ease. And so I came up with this product. It's called Sticker Burr Roller, and it's most famous in Texas. But this tool, it's a yard tool that picks up these invasive sticker plants, like what would it be called? Um,
Is it
well,
cholla like in Arizona or something different?
oh yeah, it picks up 5 different species of plants, the seedlings that grow that have the pokies on them. Puncher vine is one of them. Some of them call them bullheads. Some of them call them goat heads. There's sandburrs, grass burrs, cockleburrs. There's clover burrs, and anyways, this was an idea that my dad and me worked on, and then it came to me, and like, we've done 5 million in sales in 3 years.
Holy cow. And what's the application? Because it's clearing it for animals or for people, for what?
Most of our customers, it's for their pets. They can't let their dogs out play out in the yard because they get these
Yeah.
things in their fur and in their feet, and it injures them. And then, of course, children, and then they get in their clothes, and then they also just spread, and it takes your yards away. It just keeps getting worse and worse, and so this just keeps it from regrowing. And then I've got several other products as far as cutting them and all that to get rid of them. So I've got about 7 products now online at stickerbirdroller.com.
That's amazing. Oh, that's
Yeah.
great. Well, Stacey, I want to thank you so much. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for your candor, and thank you for what you are doing to help wake up the collective consciousness. It is so needed right now.
Thank you. Just an honor. I just, for all everyone that's out there, I just want to say how important you are. We are all in this together, and we deserve to lift each other up and encourage one another. And please do follow your dream, and please do step through your fears and push into it, and never give up on yourself, and always believe in yourself, and just show up for yourself a little more every day. You're so amazing, and we're all so amazing, and we are so much greater than we even realize. We're so much greater. So just be there for yourself 100%. Love you so much.
You made me tear up a little bit. Thank you. Thank you so much. And of course, this show is nothing without everybody who tunes in to watch. So thank you, everybody, for watching. Next up, check out this playlist of other NDE interviews. Please like and subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow so I can bring you more content. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here.